To send a message and a knockout punch that, look, we're looking to sweep you guys. You wanted us. You were crying out that you bypassed the harder team in Miami Heat.
Rose came down bad on his left foot. See him holding on to his knee and down. He was flying and he came down wrong on the left foot. Now, whether it was an ankle or a knee, I do not know. There's Coach Collins out there and all his teammates running in this with the injury. We just talked about the 26 games he has missed with an assortment of injuries and now holding a knee late in a game that is already decided for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, it's before he comes down. It's the plant right there on that left leg.
There was some give. There was some give on that knee and you could see it.
Looked like it went in too.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, you never want to see this.
How about one guy, one injury, changing
everything?
Not only this series, but I mean the landscape of the Eastern Conference and perhaps beyond, if it is
serious enough for him to miss time. But I will say this: they're used to playing without Derrick Rose this year as well.
Yeah, without Rose, they are 18-9. With him, 32-7. But they're doing the kinds of things now with his legs that, I mean, obviously they got to be thorough. But you can see his facial expression.
A collective
pain he's in.
Gas has just come over everyone in this building.
Well, it's been 10 years. 10 years ago to the day was when Derrick Rose tore his ACL. Been following the page for a while, then you'll know that my favorite team is the Chicago Bulls, and my favorite player is Derrick Rose. So I figured now that it's been, the 10-year anniversary, I can kind of explain what was going on the day that he ended up tearing his ACL. Before I do though, be sure to like this video. Also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also hit that notification bell as well. And if you remember the incident just like me, put down in the comment section below what you were doing on April 28th, 2012. What I can remember from the very start is it was the first day of the NBA playoffs. And this was on a Saturday. And it was the very first day that they had games. This was the first game. I think the game was scheduled at 1 p.m. my time. It was either noon or 1 p.m. I don't remember the exact specifics on that. But earlier in the morning, I remember my sister had a softball tournament. And we went there. It wasn't really too far away. I think it was maybe a half hour away from where we live. So it wasn't too far out of the way. And when the game started, we couldn't necessarily watch it because we were at her softball tournament. This is also before the day where you could kind of use cellular data to watch, maybe DirecTV or streams on your phone or something like people do. But I remember I was sitting in the back of the car when we were just left the tournament. I don't remember what the result of that was. I think that my sister's team did win. We were leaving and we were about to, drive back. And I remember it was second quarter and we would listen to it on the radio. I think it was on I don't know if it was on XM radio. I think it was we were listening through AM radio. The game was going on, the Bulls were winning pretty much the whole time. They weren't up huge though early on from what I can remember. I think they were up roughly around 6 to 13 points for a big chunk of the second quarter or so. And as we were driving, we were still listening to the game and stuff. And then once we got closer to home, my sister, I think, suggested that we go watch a movie, at the movie theater. I think it was just when the Three Stooges movie came out, and it was pretty popular and stuff, if you remember the 2012 version of it. And so I think the score when we went in, I don't remember the exact score, but the Bulls were up 19 or so with about 5-6 minutes left. And that time, that era, it seemed like if you had a 19-point lead with 5 or 6 minutes left, it was pretty safe. You were going to win the game. Now, maybe today's era, if you have a 19-point lead with about 5 or 6 minutes left, anyone can, just jack threes. I mean, maybe like Steph Curry or something like that. So it's not nearly as safe as it was back then, especially with how like slow paced both teams were playing. It was a pretty low scoring game compared to like a lot of the ones that you see in today's era. I think a lot of that too is because like the defensive intensity was more consistent and it was on a higher level. Long story short, we go into the movie. We were going to come back out. We were going to see, the Bulls won and all that stuff, which we did. And then right when we got into the car, we hear them on the radio talking about some injury. And instantly, it was just like, please don't be D Rose. Please don't be D Rose. Because not only is D Rose like the best player on the team at that point, but you also got to realize, I don't think a lot of people remember this, but I think in the last month or so of the regular season, like Rose only played 5 games. If you remember that game where Carmelo Anthony hit those 2 late shots on Easter, he hit the one to tie it, force overtime, and then he hit the one to take the lead and ultimately win the game. That was Rose's like first game back after missing like a dozen straight games. So I would compare it a little bit to like Donovan Mitchell last year, where he had that ankle injury. He even missed the first game of the playoffs, but then he was back for the rest of the series, and they ultimately beat Memphis, but then of course they lost the next series. Yeah, Rose had missed a lot of time. I think that's another thing people tend to forget, because they say, oh, he was a one-year wonder, he only made one All-NBA team. Well, he would have made an All-NBA team that year. He was an all-star starter. It's just that he didn't play quite that many games because he was always in and out of the lineup. The thing for me, though, is that the Bulls, we were really good without him. Like we were playing some of the best basketball even without our best player. And some people would say it was similar to Ja Morant this year, where it's like, oh, the team was better without him than they were with him. But really, that wasn't the case. I mean, the team was pretty good without him. I think they were on like a 55 win pace. But with him, we were on like a 67 win pace. We were that dominant when he played that year. We were among the league's best offenses, among the league's best defenses, among the league's best three-point shooting teams. We really had it all. And it seemed like we were going to win the championship. And then ultimately, Rose goes down and the series becomes a lot harder. Really, Joakim Noah went down later in the series too. I think a lot of people forget that. Obviously, we ended up becoming the most recent 1 seed to lose to an 8 seed. I don't really care much about that because I think most people realize that if they were healthy, the Sixers probably win 1 game max. When we got back in the car and we were listening to the radio and they're talking about this injury, and we were just hoping that it wasn't him. And then we got back home and we were watching like the replay and we saw it and it was just bad. I think the other thing too that makes it worse is that like when you listen back to Reggie Miller and what he's talking about how essentially right when the injury happened, and he's talking about how Rose had missed some games, which is true. He had just come back into the lineup, and he's saying how this Bulls team is gonna be deep, they're gonna be scary, all this kind of stuff. And then right then is when the injury happened. Like it was almost like a slap in the face. And then how Kevin Harlan with him is saying something like how one event could change the whole landscape of the Eastern Conference, the whole landscape of the NBA. It really stinks because I do think the Bulls would have won it all that year. I mean, we were, like I said, we were playing great without Rose. And, even like the Miami Heat, they went all the way, but they still had their own challenges that year. They were down 2-1 to the Indiana Pacers. They were down 3-2 to the Celtics. And I know LeBron had a great Game 6, but they were still vulnerable to some extent. They got pushed to the limit like twice. And then you factor in us who, yeah, we lost in 5 the year before in the conference finals, but all the games that we lost were pretty close. The one game that we won, we kind of blew them out. And again, factoring how well we played without Rose and the fact that we were even better when he did play, and we had that experience now making it to the conference finals the year before, I think they would have went all the way. And I will say that I know a lot of people like to put the blame on Tom Thibodeau because he was playing Rose so late in the game. And that is fair. I will say, though, that over, I think, the next like 3 or so minutes, like the Sixers kind of went on a little mini run. So it is kind of hard to gauge that. I think the last dead ball before that was over 2 minutes left, and the score was, again, like a 12 or so point differential. Which, I mean, if you're thinking about it realistically right now, that doesn't seem like a safe lead. We've seen leads get blown that are bigger than that with that much time. I mean, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, the Sacramento Kings were down 17 to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and there was only like 2.5 minutes left, and they came back and they won that game. What made it even worse for me is that in the summer of 2011, I broke my own ankle. So it seemed like when I had finally finished recovering off of it a few months later, and then the season started and Rose had all these injuries, it seemed like it was correlated to my own injury being a kid at that time. But the series ended up going to 6, and the Bulls really still probably could have won that. They really should have won that, I would say. Even without Rose, even without Noah. I mean, Omir Sheik got 2 free throws, and I'm really not sure why C.J. Watson didn't hold on to the ball before that, but Omir Sheik got 2 free throws. We were up 1. If he just hits both of them, like, we're looking pretty good, and he missed both. And then Andre Iguodala came down. He got 2 free throws, and he clutched up. You know, this is another moment, probably one of the earlier moments that people don't remember of Andre Iguodala being clutch. You know, it's not just being the Finals MVP, not just that shot in Game 2 of 2019 Finals, but no, like, he hit the 2 clutch free throws that got them to move on. I mean, it was pretty cool. I will say, like, seeing the Sixers fans get hyped, but at the same time, I was kind of upset just because it's like, dude, like, we could have went on. And it's not just the fact that Rose got injured, because again, we played well when he was gone all year long. It was just the fact that so quickly it was announced that he had tore his ACL, and then it's like, you know, you're not getting him back this year. And there was a lot of skepticism that he wasn't going to be back next year. Sure enough, he didn't play a game the next year, and then he came back, you know, in the next season, 2013-2014, and he still looked like the same Rose. I think he was kind of a little bit rusty to start off. He only played a handful of games, but he did look like the same D Rose. Then the meniscus injury comes, and then I would say he still even looked like the same D Rose the next year. It was just the fact that, like, you know, other people had also shined, like, when he was out, that it gave us more options. And I think more people were saying, well, it's not just D Rose's team at this point. Like, D Rose is one of the guys, but you also now got Jimmy Butler. You also got Pau Gasol. Joakim Noah was coming off a top 4 MVP season, Defensive Player of the Year season. So it's like you had way more options at that point in the 2014-2015 team. And then, you know, ultimately another year went by, and then we had injuries, and he was off the Bulls. So that's basically what I was doing on that day. So it started softball tournament. I was listening to the game on the radio, wasn't really able to watch it. It was the first game of the playoffs, and then I, you know, went to a movie, and the game was decided, and it was decided. But, you know, that was just kind of disappointing considering, you know, what had happened almost all year long. You know, he had been injured for several parts of the year, and then just to see another one that, like, affected the playoffs and really the outcome of the season, like, it just sucked even more. So yeah, that's basically the story. Just thought I'd share it on the 10-year anniversary. You know, obviously it is still cool to see D Rose playing at a high level. I mean, we'll see, like, when he gets back on the court and everything too. He had an injury, obviously, that sidelined him. I think he could have came back if he really wanted to, but I mean, the Knicks, like, their season wasn't really going that well, so I think he kind of just shut it down, and we'll see him again next year. You know, it'll be the, you know, D Rose that we all know and love. So yeah, that's basically gonna do it. Again, hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Tell me your story on that day if you remember it. And yeah, that's gonna do it for me. So yeah, I'm out. Peace.